Hey, Chris from Poseidon here. Going to do a review on the Armstrong Midlength board. It's a review I've been meaning to do for a while now. Spent a lot of time on this board in a bunch of different sizes, wing and prone. Have absolutely loved it, and it's really impressed me with how versatile it is as a board. I guess when it first kind of hit the market, we got the pre-release info. I kind of wasn't sure where it would fit into my quiver, but having got it, having tried it, having gone through a journey of loving it, not quite so sure about it, it's kind of firmly found a place in my quiver as something I'd never want to be without. So it's kind of something which can give everybody, I feel, as long as you've got some basic skills, something. I'm taking out for a spin today. This is the 55 litre, which is 5'5". They come in a range of sizes down to 38 litre all the way up to the new 100 litre, which has just come out. So there's something there for everybody. It's an Armstrong board, so it's construction second to none. It's full carbon construction with a really nice deck pad here, which has got these features, kind of raised sections which are really nice, so you can feel where you're standing. Inserts there so you can run foot straps if you wanted to. It's a particularly narrow board, which is kind of the purpose of that mid-length design. It takes a lot away from what the brands have learned on the downwind shapes, gathering speed, gathering momentum, and it puts them into a more compact design. So the bottom shape especially, you see it's got a very similar sort of shape to a downwind sort of shape. So quite a bit of tail rocker at the back here. So quite a bit of tail rocker at the back, which kicks up, which just allows you to jump it off the water really easy. A real flat midsection with quite a lot of beveling on the side here, which again helps it to take off and it helps it to accelerate, but it also means that it doesn't catch when you're pushing it around. Relatively flat all the way up to the top, with then a kind of a dramatic bit of kick on the nose rocker right at the end. So this is a board which kind of excels in everything. This for me, 55 litre, feels like a really good size with a compromise to be able to prone it and wing it. The other sizes all have their place as well. So let's take it for a spin. On the mid-length, first thing you notice when you stop paddling, especially coming off a prone board or a sinker, is how well this board paddles. That extra water line and that kind of narrow width to it means as you're paddling out, it carries a lot of momentum. So for that journey out back, or if you're paddling out to the wind line, straight away you've got a board that makes it easier. As you set up, it's obviously narrower. This is an 18 inch wide, so it's more tippy, and I'm out in pretty choppy conditions today, about as difficult as it could get for this board, and you definitely notice that. So if you're not looking at the 100 litre, which is quite a bit wider, if you're looking at the smaller ones, you should bear in mind that this definitely shouldn't be your first board, because it is pretty narrow, and you want to be at a stage where you can create some speed to get some stability, and as soon as you do create speed, it picks up its stability really quickly and locks into the water. But you should be ready for that, and if you are dropping down to a narrow board like this, make sure your first session's in flatter water so you're not killing yourself in shot. And on the mid-length, particularly at that point where you're going to go from sitting up to knees and then up to standing, that's a particularly difficult moment, so you should be ready for that. Create some speed with it, so use that wing, get some speed, and as you're going for that next stage, there's going to be a bit of a difficult moment where you've got to get on up, but this isn't a beginner board. That's not what it's pitched as. It's pitched as a progressive board to give you more lively feeling with an easier get-go, is kind of what it's aimed at. So getting up on foil, this board, as long as you can keep your balance, is absolutely phenomenal. It just slides through the water, tracks really, really well, and it never grips. It just accelerates, picks up speed, and then just kind of slides off the water. I think because of that tail rocker and because of the base shape, it never feels like it's sticking, and you never need to give it like a kick to take off. it just slices back up, or slices up. And then you're up and you're going. If you touch back down, mistake, or you run out of wind, or you're coming back down, it's got this phenomenal feeling where it doesn't grip in the slightest, and sometimes you don't even know you've touched down. It just carries on its speed and picks back up. So for winging, obviously that's beautiful, because if you come back down, it's super forgiving. But on prone as well, it makes it very, very easy to get onto a whole different range of waves. So when you're first paddling in, that paddle speed really, really helps you pick up speed. And obviously, you know, you're hoping to ride a little board for prone, but quite often, if you're in difficult conditions, if the waves back off, they don't quite go over, or you're in fatter waves or slower waves, or even faster waves sometimes, it can be hard to ride a little board. But the paddle speed of this, coupled with the glide through the water, means as long as you've just got some sort of a ramp, you need a little kick, but as soon as you're then on a ramp, it just picks up speed, it doesn't slow down, and it's so forgiving to taking off. If you then come back down, you haven't quite got enough lift in your foil, you touch back down, it's not like it's game over, you can then pick it back up again. So that touchdown characteristics is pretty phenomenal. Riding the board, it feels super lively, so that narrow width and this Armstrong construction, which is super rigid, means you feel really connected to the foil. It's really rigid under your foot, and you notice that straight away. And that width means it's toe to heel feeling, it's roll, it's so lively, it's so fun, it feels like you're on a smaller board. And you know, on spec, if you were to look at a 5.55 foot board, you're thinking, oh, that's a little bit big. But with that central mast position, with that narrow width and this construction, means it's so lively, it feels super, super fun to ride. You are on a bigger board, so it's 5.5, the track's in the centre, which means it feels a little bit different, and it's a bit more like a longboard sort of style, where you'll find that your turns are a bit more drawn out. And I think with spending a lot of time on it, I've definitely noticed with that central position and with a lot of tail behind the mast, it almost feels like it loosens up the yaw, which, if you want that, if you want a board that can sort of sit flat and rotate up the yaw, that's really nice. But it does mean that if you start pushing through your turns, to your top turns, to your bottom turns, you've got to be careful not to lose the tail with that kind of extra slip on the back end. So there's definitely something to think about, which I guess kind of brings on to, there's so much raving about how good this board is and how nice it is to ride. It almost feels like it's the dream board, and why would you ride anything else? But I've definitely found that there are compromises, and you're on a board here which is a little bit longer, which is a bit narrower. So aside from how sort of tricky it is to get going, and especially the smaller ones, how tippy it is, not tricky to get up, but tricky to balance on, you're then on a board which is a little bit longer and it's got a lot of nose. So with winging, you don't notice it quite so much unless you're in a more critical wave. But with prone, you kind of notice it if you're on a shorter, steeper takeoff. But you're on a longer board now, which means that if it is a steep takeoff, it can be a little bit difficult to adapt your technique not to bury the nose. So it's more for those fatter conditions, where it's more of a roll in rather than a pitchy takeoff. It's also with that extra nose, if you are doing a hard turn, that nose can catch, and with the shape of it, if it catches, it can throw you off. It can be a little bit less forgiving than, say, a shorter, wider, fatter sort of a board. So there's these compromises on this mid-length, where you kind of feel, because it's a jack of all trades, definitely there's a master of none. But as a board which is designed to be highly versatile, make it easy to get going, make it super forgiving to touch down, make at the same time feel lively and fun to ride, the Armstrong mid-length kind of feels like the sort of board which could be a one board quiver if you've got your skills and you're picking the right size, but absolutely outright it's going to be a board that is travel friendly. If I was to go travelling myself, a 55 litre, I know I can wing it, I know I can prone it, you can do just about everything on this board comfortably. Would I choose to ride it every time? I'd probably choose a more performance board by choice, but for that extra feeling, for the extra snap, for how much more lively it feels riding a performance board. But having got this board, having spent a lot of time on it, over the last 4 months or so, I've spent more time riding this mid-length than I have any other board in the quiver, because there's so many times you rock up at the spot and you're not sure how conditions are going to be, and you're looking down and you're not sure if you're going to be underpowered, or you're not sure if the waves are going to be pretty big or too small, and you kind of know that having a mid-length in the quiver and choosing to take that board out means it's a session saver, and you're out there and you're having a great time even if the conditions weren't as good as you were hoping. So for sure I couldn't be without one in the quiver. Highly recommend it. Smaller sizes, super lively, super versatile, prone and wing. Bigger sizes, winging, as long as you've got some skills and you're happy with your balance, highly recommend it. The light wind winging for versatility, definitely check it out. Give us a shout if you want more info, if you want to try one, if you want your own. I'm Chris at Poseidon Watersports, and we're at poseidon-watersports.com.